This is the Koori Knockout Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube, to our podcasts, all of our platforms. If you love old school footy, you love Koori Knockout footy, you love blackfella footy, you love good footy yarns, this is a place for you. Make sure you're subscribing because we've got some great guests on today. Dino's back. We found him back from Las Vegas. He had a good time over there, and we've got the voice of the knockout, Brad Cooke. Now, if you don't recognise his face, you will recognise his voice. He's been calling the Koori Knockout for
17 years.
17 years. Cookie, it's good to have you on the podcast this week, brother.
Georgie and Dino, what a pleasure. I've been watching the show, boys, from the start, so it's great to be here, actually. I'm really looking forward to yarning about knockout. I never get sick of talking about knockout. It's the best time of the year. Everyone looks forward to it, and I'm no different.
And George, this is an interview we've been waiting a long time to get. You know, you talk about knockout. You can't talk about knockout without Brad Cooke. And I think, like Cookie, and I've spoken to you a lot about this. I've had the pleasure of calling alongside you, but you've elevated the knockout off the field probably more than anyone else.
Wow.
It's the professionalism in the way you call, the work that you put into it, which I get to see firsthand. And I'm going to love going into that later because I know there's a lot of young people out there that love rugby league. They might not play rugby league on the field, but they love it and they're passionate about it and they talk about it a lot. And they look for opportunities and what the pathway is into calling things like the knockout and into, leading to calling the NRL one day. And I want to talk to you about that because if there's anyone deserving of in our communities, it's definitely you. And I know the hard work you put into it, and I can't wait to chat to you about that later on in the podcast.
Well, I think what people don't realise is that I love the game and want to be in it as much as the players want to be in it. You know, like I played it when I was a kid as well, but I see the effort the players put in. I see how professional the game's gotten. Everyone's working harder, training harder, eating better. You know, it's more professional on the field. That it should be just as professional off the field. And I think NITV's done a really good job in elevating the quality of the vision and the camera numbers, and just how it looks and sounds. I love it every time we get to do it.
Well, without a doubt, the best in the game that there is calling it. It's you and Daylight at the moment. But tell us a little bit about your story of how you got to there, because people probably don't realise that you were actually a gun player yourself back in your day.
A gun for a very short time. I think I've got one of those careers that you just didn't like to train or get fit. Look, I was always a big body. I was a young fella from Lapa. I grew up playing my junior footy there. Had a little bit of a break in high school years, for about 3 years while I just wasn't playing footy. We didn't have a lot of young fellas in my age group that were playing at Lapa at the time. So there was a bit of a break, and I didn't want to play anywhere else. But we got a side back when I was about 17, and I was also playing a bit of rugby as well in the junior Randwick grades. But I was probably a wannabe lock forward, but I was a front rower. Like that fellow who always wanted to play lock because he thought he had good hands,
That's not fair. When they look at you and go, "No, you're a big fella. You're playing front row."
Well, the worst thing in
we
our
didn't always
community
want to play front
worst
row.
thing in our community is because they're all little fellas. If you got any size,
true.
you're going straight to the front row, no matter what. But yeah, keep going, brother. Tell us about it.
No. And look, it wasn't much of a playing career, that's for sure. But I had the pleasure of being captain of a lot of my junior C grades and B grades at Lapa. When we didn't have a side, I actually ducked over and played for like the Wombats for a couple of years.
We're just running them down for the last 10 minutes.
It kills me to say it. And they looked after me. They were a good club when I was playing there at the time. It was even better in 1991 when I was playing with the Wombats, but Lapa knocked them off in the grand final. It was so good. That was a golden year for Lapa Rugby League 91. We might talk about that later. But and I was lucky enough to play in an under-19s exhibition game with Lapa at Henson Park. It was in 92. We won the knockout 91, so we got the right to host this exhibition game. And at the time, there was a whole bunch, like an under-19s game was played with the previous winner of the exhibition game versus the ones who won the knockout.
Yeah, nice.
That's what was happening back in the early 90s. So Moree had won this thing 6 years in a row in the under-19s. They just had phenomenal young junior players. And then Lapa put a side, which, look, respectfully, it wasn't a full Lapa side. It was a make-up side of some Sydney players, which I think is the reason why we were so comfortably won it. Because, as I said, we didn't have a lot of juniors in my day at Lapa. And, in fact, I was the captain of a side which had Anthony Mundine, Wes Patton, Robbie John Simpson, Matt Mitchell. Like, it was a who's who, Mick Salafia, the list goes on of quality players. So I was in Sydney, and we had a lot of South Coast lads too, Leon Brown, and that come up from the coast. So we had a gun side, and the Lapa lads that played there were equally as good, and we won that game at Henson Park, and I played 2 senior knockouts in the twos for Lapa, so I had not much of a knockout career myself, but I played South Taree both times, the one side, and got flogged.
Is that the South Taree side that we talked about all them years?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was playing front row against them and got bashed both years. So it was phenomenal experience. What I loved about knockout as a young bloke, when you're a Sydney blackfella, right, who's come up against country sides, just to be recognised and identified as a blackfella from the opposition is gold. And that's what I really enjoyed about it back then in the early days.
What were your early memories as a young kid watching the knockout? What's the first time you can remember going to the knockout, and who were you there to watch?
Honestly, I didn't see a lot of early ones before that time when I first played in '92. I even missed the '91 when we won because I was crook. I didn't get a chance to go and see it, and that was in Sydney. So that was the biggest regret, FOMO I've got, is being crook when not being able to go to the knockout in '91 and seeing Lapa win, because as history tells you, we haven't won too many since. So, you know, that's a big regret. But that early time when I first played out at Henson Park in '92, just the sheer size of the crowd of people there was incredible. The noise, the different colours, that's what got me excited, is that how could so many deadly players, all blackfellas, come together as one? Because, you know, as watching on TV, we never got to see that.
Certainly colourful. Now, this '91 Lapa team, tell us about it, because I remember watching them play, and they certainly a great side, a lot of great players. What were your memories of the team, and who were the players that stood out for you?
I think what I do remember, because as I said, I would have been about 17, 18 at the time, that they were really good. So just getting invited in to be in the dressing room, to go, you know, you always want to be that fly on the wall in the dressing room in a winning comp. So to be and being able to see that and be part of that was really great. Honestly, there's too many to listen to that side, but being an old front rower, you can't go past a bloke like Gary Ardler. Big Rat was like the go-to big fella in the Lapa community. He was the aggressor, he was the skillful player. And, you know, his brother, Young Rat, too, Rodney, was a skillful ball player himself. But this Big Rat was one of the real goers. And, you know, look, it was a sea of quality black fellas, all from Lapa, and the sprinkling of white fellas in there as well, because we are, in black and white, we unite, is one of our catchphrases.
For the club comp.
For the club comp, yeah. But in that knockout side, we had Lions boys, you know, the Adler boys, Sims boys, like, pick a family name, they all played at Lapa in that particular time.
I was at Guildford, and I remember I watched it. My dad played for Koori Boomerangs, and the Koori Boomerangs had probably one of the best country sides that had been to the knockout, up there with these Walgett teams that won that 3 in a row. And you should have seen it. This was a stacked team. They had players from the coast, they had players from Armidale, all go over to Koori and play in this side, one of the best Boomerang sides. And they played Lapa, and the Lions brothers outstanding in that game. And just remember, it was one of the best knockout games you've ever seen. Just before it got dark, as it got dark out at Guildford, and the crowd, I just remember they had a rope down the sideline of the field. The rope was doing nothing. Whenever there was a break made, the crowd was run on it. And Moorie, they had the Tumala, like they had McGrady's in their team. They had Ewan and Loppy, and Rick was a young one there. Sunboy Peckham was young.
Wow.
You should have seen his Moree team. It was outstanding. You know,
but they were all boys.
100%. They were all young.
Because they played against that side. I was in the year later.
Yeah, the year later they were still there.
Young enough to play under 19s.
Rick was still running around in the 19s, him and son. But they had this great side, and Lapa beat them. And that's what I first ever remember watching Lapa. And I thought, geez, they must be a good team if they could hold them boomies out. And they end up going on and winning the knockout.
But that's the point I want to make about winning in '91 in that grand final in the South Comp. Majority of that side went in to play the knockout together, and that's why whenever Lapa's won a knockout, they've won the South Comp.
Yeah,
you know, which I guess is why we're a little bit excited about 2025 South Comp. You know, getting a lot of the boys back. So that's, and I don't know whether that's the same. It was certainly the same with Redfern, right? When you guys won all those knockouts, or the 2 knockouts, you were able to get a strong side on the park week to week, and a lot of them backed up to come play in the KO. So when you get that nucleus of a side that supports each other, plays each other all throughout the year, it just makes it easier come knockout time, because there's no greater time where trust is at its most is at the knockout. You've got to trust the bloke next to you.
Yeah.
you know, if you don't trust that player next year, you're pointless even turning up to a KO thinking you're going to make a Monday.
Well, that's one thing that I always talk about is a big advantage that these teams in that South Sydney comp have, as well as the teams in the Newcastle comp, the quality of the competitions that you play in. Like you talk about back in that era when we've got Moree, Walgett, all them sides are really very competitive. Yeah. The local competition was also very competitive. One thing that's never dropped off, and while it has dropped off in the country, it hasn't dropped off here in the Sydney. That South Sydney comp is always a very strong comp. So when you talk about Lapa winning that comp and then going on to win the knockout, it makes sense because you've got that advantage of playing together all year, getting them combinations going. You're playing against very tough competition, and then you roll into the knockout, fresh off that, only a couple of weeks after winning the comp, and you roll straight in, you've still got them combinations, and you're hardened from the competition that you played all year round, and no wonder they're hard to beat. That's why I always say Lapa is always a very, very tough competition when it comes to the knockout. And they're always in my top 4, top 5. You know they're going to be there. They're going to be pushing to be there come Monday.
Yeah.
They like you said, they haven't won it too many times since 91. What is the ingredient that's missing there? Because they make the more Mondays than anyone. They're always the most professional, most well-prepared, most well-organised team up there with that.
Fit-looking team too.
And they've always got good young players. And I've always said, when are these good young players going to turn into good old players and win it and take it out for them? What is the key out there? What do you think it is that's missing? Or is it just the luck of the draw? They've had tough draws when they've had their best teams.
Oh, I don't think any team blames a draw. I know, George, you'd never blame a draw because when you've won knockouts, you've had the worst draws, right?
Yeah, that's true.
When you've had easier draws, you probably haven't as well, except for those first-round knockouts you've had. That wasn't a dig.
Oh, it felt like it. It just brought up a bad memory.
I give it to him. He's won 2 in a row.
No one's feeling sorry for you, brother.
Give it to him.
Look, I think a lot of it has been not having that killer punch at the end. Like when I called the 18 grand final. I'm going to say, is it 19? They blur into one. It was the one where, it was 18, right? Where Lapa played Newcastle All Blacks. Lapa led 18-0. So to give away a grand final lead 18-0 means you haven't played smart on the back end of your footy. You haven't controlled it. You've either gone too hard, and what we saw in that game is we saw the Briggs boys just chip away. Just slowly but surely, Will Smith and all that, just chipping away, and eventually they ground Lapa down and they kicked the field goal and won the game at the end. I think it's a case of, you just got to play smart when you need to play smart. There's no doubting the toughness, the skill factor, the ability to score points or play good footy, but I think we've lacked a few intelligence pieces at the back end of games that have really cost us. Even like you saw 2 years ago when Lapa beat Burke in the quarter final, it was skill that got them home to beat Burke, who were in front at the bell. Last time around, it was a lack of smarts and intelligence, which cost them the game last year against Burke on the bell. So I think in being smart, who's controlling the game at the end, I think Lapa needs to make some decisions about who's in charge and who's running sides, because I think historically we've had an issue where we've had too many people calling shots.
Because like you talk about Wollumban, they were in front by more than 18 points against Wollumban.
And then the next year against you was the same thing, 07 and 08. Three grand finals there. I didn't call 07, but I called 08. And I called the other one where we were behind as well. So that's what I'm saying. It's every now and again the brain snaps and fades at the end of a game for Lapa, and they get run down.
Because I definitely believe in that.
Sorry, Lapa, but I'm calling it as I see it.
Look, I think it helps, right? If someone out there, and Dill Farrell, and they've got smart football people there now, if they know what it is that a lot of smart football people think is the issue out there, they can go and work hard to correct it. Because I remember in 08, they had a better team than us. They were a way better team than us. And they played silly football. Like, they just didn't test us out wide and where they would have dominated. Richie Williams would have cut us to pieces, and Wiley and Dill and some of the backs that you had in that team.
You just named two of my favourite all-time
Jamie
players
Ingram and we didn't have the backs to match them, but they starved them of the ball out wide, and they tried to play Narwhal through the middle, which was where that's the only strength we had was in that team. So,
I mean, look, I know you've touched on it on the show before, but that losing Alpha in that game that weekend was probably the the low light of the history of knockout for me. But to see you guys bounce back and win that after losing him is also one of the highlights of calling it. I forget Lapa losing the grand final, even though that was my first ever knockout to call, and I had to deal with that and working out how to talk about it, and show compassion and support for you guys as a community, but then also to not disrespect and say the wrong thing on air. And it was like literally year one of me working on television. So it was a challenging time, but I just want to take my hat off to your community up there for dealing with it the way you did.
What about not football moments, but what are some of the other things that you've had to deal that stand out for you over the years of calling a knockout that are different challenges off the field, or funny instances, or are there any yarns that you can remember off the top of your head about?
I think names has always been an issue, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've made the number of mistakes I've made in names has declined over the years because I've done a lot more research and homework.
Has any old aunties gone off at you because have you been on Facebook because you called someone?
A couple of times. Like back when we were doing Barefoot Rugby League show, right? We had this thing called Supporter of the Week.
Yeah.
And this young girl, her name was, it's one of those names where it's like Jaliqua or Shaniqua or something like that, right? And I might have called it Janika or something like that. And this father, not kidding you, after I called a knockout game, he runs across that field and fronts me on the middle of the field, ripping into me because I called his daughter the wrong name on Supporter of the Week. She's 7 years old. I said, bruh, put a phonetic bracket thing there, pronounce like this. But he ripped me. I'm like, that's crazy. You're welcome, by the way.
Have you ever been threatened with a lawsuit? Because I have. I've had someone.
Oh, not a lot. But I tell you, one of the aunties and names, the greatest comeback of all time is the Maury-Yul Monaro game, right? Bathurst. I get more people commenting me about how good was that game. But that lives in my head as a nightmare, that game. Because I mispronounced two guys' names who killed it all through that whole carnival. But because we were short-staffed and you're running from game to game and you're just getting lists, sometimes back in that day, that was only 4 years into doing knockout. We didn't have enough numbers and people would give you the name, you'd look at it and go, oh, I know how that's pronounced. Well, his name isn't Terrari, right? I called Anthony and Dane Terrare, because I'm thinking we've got all these mixes with black fellas and Polynesian fellas having babies and a few names. I'm thinking, it's Terrare, something like that. So I was real deadly.
Terrare.
Roll on the tongue and all.
Like 2 games in, this auntie screams out from the scaffold, because we're calling him the scaffold at Bathurst, screams out, hey, you idiot, it's Terrare, not Terrari. But she called me a few other names, not just idiot. Right, and I said, hey, I'm so sorry, Aunt. I'll fix that up for you. I'll get it right now. But even though Aaron Briley, I was calling him Brearley, and he's one of my favourite all-time knockout players. So to get his name wrong and have it go down, and every time you watch that back, because it's replayed a million times over, all I'm hearing is me mispronounce names, and it crushes me every single time. That Bathurst one, but I'll tell you, because he's put it on there, and so it's freezing. I'm from Lapa, we don't get cold. So I'm freezing. And I wore my little ski pants. I've got these ski pants that I must have wore 10 years ago. So I wore them up there. Mark Eller's, the sports producer there, and he drives me to the thing. I'm getting up. We do our pre-game yarns. I'm pumped. I'm climbing the scaffold. From front to back, I rip my ski pants. Oh. Front to back. I'm talking from the belt to the back. I'm wearing chaps. And I've got nothing but undies on. And it's 0 degrees in Bathurst, and I'm in an outside scaffold, and the wind's just howling straight across me. And I'm shivering calling the first game, can't barely get the call out. I'm just freezing. And at half time, I'm screaming, Mark. He goes, what? He goes, we've got to go back. I need a new pair of pants. And everyone in the whole stadium just heard me scream this out. And I thought, it's a shame job. So Bathurst was memorable for many reasons for me.
Well, testing conditions there, definitely. Freezing cold up there as your corner. But one thing, and I've seen this over the last few years, is how much work you do put into going around and getting the names. And you come up there with your book and you got all your things written down and all the details on the team list. And as a co-commentator, geez, it's a massive help. All the information that you've got there about the players, where they're from, who they're connected to, what their team's about, all that stuff. And I love that extra care and that extra mile you walk to go and do, because that's the challenge, right? You're spending all your time walking around finding these teams, finding out all this information.
Yeah. For me, it's about respect. Like, if I've got 50 names on a sheet, 25 on each side, I'll do my absolute best to make sure each of those 50 names are mentioned, because there's family at home. There's family at home who want to hear their names mentioned. And if it's a knockout,
100%.
right? They could get knocked out in that one game. If they're not mentioned, well, I haven't had a chance to mention that person's name. Even if they get on and spend 2 minutes on the wing, I'll be like, if we've given the young fella a crack, his name's so-and-so, he'll have one run, and I'm thinking, I'm hoping he's saying, Brad Cooke called me name. But for me, it's not about me. It's about making sure that kid and that family get their name mentioned. But as I said, a lot of it comes from the earlier mistakes that I made. Going into games thinking I was deadly and making mistakes with names or saying the wrong thing. The other thing too is when fellas will warm up and then they'll go and tape a knee, or then they'll go and strap a head like before they play after they've just been warming up. And I'm like, who's the fella with the strapped head and the taped knee? Like, he didn't have that 10 minutes ago. Because I will run down there. I'll get the team lists. Sometimes I get the team lists from, we've got runners at NITV, a lot of young people that we get to do a good job getting the names for us. But I will rewrite every single team list. You'll see me rewrite 1 through 25 on a strip, because it's in my writing. And when I'm writing number 1, Jade Anderson, it's committed to memory. So I'm writing numbers, I'm writing names, I'm committing to memory. And a lot of black fellas are like when they write these team lists. They'll write down names first and then match the numbers later. So it goes 16, 4, 23, 6. And I'm like, who fucking did this?
Well, I know early on too, and it's a lot different now, but early on, teams didn't used to have the full 25 jerseys, and people would swap jerseys on the sideline before when they make the substitution.
Yeah.
So that's a curveball for you.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, there was some games where I'd be like, right, I've been around this game for a few years now. I know that's not that fella. I know his name, and if I call him, and you can't get there and crack the shits, on live television. You can't say, hey, read this list, this is all wrong, and who do I, have a blow up at later? You just got to just say to people, oh look, unfortunately we've got a few issues with the team lists. You got to go professional and say, whereas you really just want to blow up. Yeah. And you just can't. You just got to, hopefully you're on. Oh, who's down on the sideline? Can you go and find out who numbers 1 to 25 are, please?
What's been some of the admirable things you've seen about different teams, and why? Tell us some of obviously there's different styles of play from a lot of the different sides. There's different preparations, different reasons why sides play at the knockout, and there's a lot of different reasons why you admire teams. It's not just about the way, the winner and whether they're successful or not. It's a style of footy and stuff like that. Tell us about some of your favourite teams.
Look, it's a good point. Usually that comes down to who's won the knockout, has had the best preparation, or done something different, or is more clinical about how they do things. I think over the years, it's, as you guys would have seen, the game's changed a lot from who's got the flashiest players to who can play more like a team, who's playing more, sad to say it, more NRL like football. Like Lapa's always at least tried to get structure right. If we can, right, this is your job, you got to do this, and then hopefully you've got good enough halves that can release the outside backs. But I think I've seen over the years players that are, I'd say, like, I really admired the work that Ronald did when Minda came together, right, to play 5 straight grand finals. He got 1 out of those 5 grand finals, but you could see that he sort of reintroduced the proper buddy system of replacements. And I know that's been happening for a little while, but that would have been like, George, I know I want to come on and replace me, because you don't want, an average front rower replacing you on the roster. You want someone who's going to do your job for you when you go off the field. What I've seen happen in stronger sides is that you don't lose as much when those players come on and buddy and in that particular spot. So I've admired that. When you guys won the 2 years that you won, what I loved was the involvement of the back 5. Like the Robinson boys and all that they did running the ball from the kick return. That was a revolution. Like the amount of work that they did. Like I honestly believe that you won the knockout off the back of the back 5.
Decent back 5 though.
Oh, it was.
Kieran Vale, they're all some great dummy half runners there. You got Josh Addo-Carr, Kieran Vale,
they might
the
be,
Robinson brothers.
But there's plenty of teams out there with great back 5 that don't do that hard
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely.
You've got to be willing to do that.
When you're talking about
right?
hard work, there's Kieran Vale and them Robinson brothers, the Fox. They're the toughest some of the toughest wingers and sort of outside backs that will take them tough carries.
Yeah.
as
Well, I
so-
mean, look, it plays into the hands that they're guys who like to get their hands on the ball and don't like to pass it too.
Yeah.
You know, respectfully for those fellas, they did the hard work that time, which I think made it pretty easy for you guys, especially in the front row. All of a sudden, you're making your first carry from the 40, not the 20.
Yeah.
That was a big effort. You know what I mean? So they're two of the systems I think that I've really enjoyed watching in two different styles.
Going back in the early days, there were some sides that really stand out for you in your memories. Like, you remember the Nambucca sides that were dominant throughout the 90s?
No, I don't, unfortunately. No, I didn't get a chance to see that domination from them in that mid-90s. Like, they played 4 grand finals in a row. And won 3 of them anyway out of that 4. So, but, you know, no, a lot of the players that come out of that area, and they did it off the back of big boys up front too, who could lead the way, you know. That once you've set a platform up front, and I think I heard you talk about with Bo and Ryan, if you can win the middle, you're way ahead of most games.
That's very true. Now I want to talk a little. Let's get a little bit into the calling side of things, because a lot of people wouldn't know what you do in that space, how you became so good at what you do. And I know you talked about you made some mistakes early to get better in time, but run us through what your preparation is leading up to a knockout. How are you so good at what you do?
I think I've got a good enough memory for faces and names. That helps a lot. And there's systems in that too, which I can commit a name and a face and a number and a look, physical look to something. So it's not photographic, but I can introduce it. And I've got a skill where it's like, you know, during the game, I make sure I call a player's name in full, probably 3 times before I'll then move on to just calling by last name. And then some names are so rhythmic that you just call them by the first full name all the time, you know? Like, how many times would I call you Big Georgie Rose? Like
I love it.
You know, but it flows, right?
Because when you think
I did the
about
same
it,
thing
you
with
got
Deadly
that big
Brother.
lovely thing up front there for Walgett, and that's how you remember
Big
me.
gorgeous Georgie.
That's
big,
how I bring the
beautiful
two together. That's how I knew
man.
it was you. Big lovely thing. But I did the same thing with deadly fellas who, you know, passed now, like Reggie Saunders and Tohi Leha. Like I said their full names all the time because they're just big fellas. I loved them because they were big boys.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it comes down to that. But the work in beforehand is we've set up a good system now with NITVs that we've got 3 ball-by-ball callers. So it allows me to call the first game, but I've got enough time in the early morning to get the team list. Because remember, Saturday there's no TV coverage. So on Saturday I'm watching as many games as my body can physically walk me around to see. And I'm asking questions. Hey, who's that? What's going on there? And I'm getting the team list. I'm taking photographs of every team list from all the desks. They're sick of me walking around looking over their shoulders, you know, taking photos. And I'm flicking through and I'm sitting looking at the benches and I'm watching them play for 10 minutes. And I already, okay, I know what the strength of that side is. I'll park that. And I'm doing that as many times as I possibly can. So when I do get to see them on TV and when I get around the warm-up area, and that's a killer too. I've got a funny from last year on the warm-up areas. I'm spending as much time with the manager of the team. Because if it's a community team that I don't really know that well, that's the homework is, hey, brother, who am I looking out for here? Who's been deadly all year? Where do they normally play? Who's in a system, right? I would never have known about Amaziah Murga, right? If someone didn't say to me, he's at the Storm.
Little brother's killing it at the moment too.
Destroying them.
Absolutely killing it.
You know, unbelievable. So for me to hear that stuff, I'm definitely making note of that. Because when he scores a mad try or pulls off a big hit on Blakey Ferguson, I'm saying, well, and he's at the Melbourne Storm for 3 years. So then Melbourne Storm fans, everyone's like, they're rubbing their hands together because they've got this young, tough little speedster. So I'll walk around and I'll see, and then I'm looking for physical types, right? Has he got, you know, dreadlocked hair, or has he got a, you know, tape here or tape there? What colour boots has he got? You know, who's talking up? So when I'm saying, you know, he's a real talker, this one, I only know that because I've been there 5 minutes before listening to the one doing all the talking. And sometimes it's the players you least expect doing all the talking. But 9 times out of 10, it's the oldest fella in the side who, you know, he's still probably on the bench most of the game doing all the yapping. It's knockout. It's experience, you know, and they're the ones barking the orders, and the young ones are either dealing with them, barking all the orders and just go right over uncle, or they're really soaking it up, you know. And then it's a case of I take that, I'll rewrite all the names down, as I said, 1 through 25, both teams. I'll say them out loud. I'll even walk around if there's a name that I don't know. I'll say number 1, you know, and I'll rattle off his name. And he goes, "Is that how you say your name?" He goes, "Yeah, bud." I said, "You say it back to me." He goes, "Blah, blah, blah." And I go, "Okay, great." So that's how you want me to say it. And then the challenge I've had over the years is blackfellas, managers writing names down, but they're using the wrong surname. They're using the mum's name instead of the dad's name, and then I'm getting roused. Like, I've had all these issues over the years where they're hunting me down because the manager put the wrong name down, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And then really it's a case of I get up in the box, I'll use my binoculars if I want to see people closer up. Like when I did the NRL for 3 years with ABC, and the amount of times the Burgess brothers would change boots after warm-up into the game.
So you're noticing that detail.
Well, but I didn't. Well, you only notice it after they've run the ball 3 times and you've called them the wrong name 3 times because they've changed boots. And the other thing too is when you're calling games, and you guys would know this, if you don't really know who's catching the ball off the kickoff because they've made changes or whatever, they're running at you. So there's no number on their back.
Yeah.
You're looking at a face. So then you
need something
trick
else.
if you don't have an identifier and you don't know who it is, then your trick is, and he's the big first hit up. You know, Lapa's going to bring the ball back up here nice and tough. Oh, that's a deadly run. By the time I've bluffed enough of airtime calling that he's rolled over and I see number 10 on his back or number 22 and I know who it is. So there's a lot of tricks in the trade where you don't give up, you don't know who someone is. You just you wait long enough until you've got their number and then you make sure you say their name. Because I said, you never know when you're going to get another chance. That fella might have got hurt, he's off and you haven't called his name.
And you can't call everyone Big Cuzzo, eh?
Well,
Big Cuzzo, he's flicked it to Big Cuzzo.
Oh, yeah, no. That's, as I was saying, like, no one, and yes, you might mention, they're brothers or they're cousins. You've done that homework beforehand, but no one wants to be just bundled up into somebody else. Yeah. I've never done that, you know. It's unfair on the individual, especially if they're a lot better than their cousin or their brother.
So all the teams... have a look at this face. If he comes up to you, hounding you at the knockout, asking you questions about your team, this is why. This is so he gets everything right when it comes to the call. And if you want your name called properly and you want to get talked about, talk to this man when you see him hovering around at the knockout.
I think this is why I'm so great.
you know, he starts early, George.
Yeah.
I seen him at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's up early and he's already tuning in. You're already starting to think about the day. He's planned his day. And it's that preparation and that work. And I stand up there with him, and he doesn't look at the paper. So I know you write all this stuff down, but he's just got it in his head by the time the game starts. And I'm sitting there watching him, listening to him call, and I'm looking at the paper and going, so that is the guy there. And I'm sort of got my finger on the player so I can see who it is and stuff like that. But he's just watching the game. And I think it's a bit of... not preempting, but I think you're just predicting the kickoff's going to go to this guy, and I would recall one of these big boys is going to come in hard, and they're probably going to be met by these guys because it starts straight away with him straight away, and I go, oh, geez, he's switched on here.
It's football knowledge, right?
Yeah.
You know that when a ball's in a particular side of the field, you know either the back rower or the centres that's going to be there to catch that ball. Who plays left side, who plays right side.
Yeah.
In knockout, a lot of that stuff just gets thrown all out because all of a sudden you got 3 halfbacks on the field on one side because that's just how the side needs them to be. You know, but come back into games, what I really am mindful of is I always make sure I call both men's semis in the morning. And that way, like people say, why don't you take a break? Because I'm on air for two and a half hours in the morning on the Monday.
Yeah.
But if I don't call both games, then I can't have equal knowledge of those 2 teams coming into the final. Because as you know, on Pool D, or whatever pool it is, you don't see them on TV until Monday morning.
Yeah.
I guess what a lot of people forget is like, oh, hang on, I've got to call a whole 60-minute game on a team that I haven't even seen yet. But that's the way it is. You've got to get down on the field. Whereas usually if I've called them on the Sunday, I'm actually not even going down to that group of people. What I'll say to them is, any injuries? Or who's limping, who's busted? Are you willing to tell me? Because everyone usually lies to me. No, we're sweet, you know. But it's... Then
you
I'll
don't want to
focus
give away
on
your
the other
secrets,
side.
eh?
Oh, exactly. Like, you know, if I see someone down there and they're in a sling, then I know they're gone. Right? Or at least some would know with ice around the ankles and I know we're not seeing them. So it's you've got to use your football knowledge and brains and smarts And, you've got to be passionate about it, because I don't call any footy all throughout the year. It's 2 days a year that I call rugby league. That's it.
You talked about a little bit of work with the ABC. Now, we've always wondered in rugby, why isn't Brad Cooke calling on Fox or Channel 9 and get those up? Because you've got the ability, the talent, the skills, the work ethic, the professionalism of anyone calling rugby league at any level. Talk to us about your journey to try and progress into that and the challenges you faced, because it's still an area where there still hasn't been an Indigenous man call a game on rugby league, on the radio, on any of that sort of stuff for a long time. Talk about your career as you try to progress down that path as a caller.
I appreciate it, Dean. And one thing I want to quickly touch on is I've actually called an NRL game with George.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
We called an NRL game at Bathurst. And where were we sitting? They had no spot for us at the ABC, right? They didn't have any, because the TV took it up. And we sat on the southeast corner,
southeast,
looking into the sun.
Yeah.
And a completely reverse angle of the TV monitor that they'd given us.
Yeah.
So we had to call a game of footy from literally 150 yards away from the far end of the field. It was a nightmare. But we had a good time, didn't we?
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Where did I start? I started in radio in 2000. So I've been doing community radio, sports programming, sort of mainstream junior sports programming, interviewing talented people. And then I progressed into doing a part-time job at Koori Radio. I was the first ever breakfast host at Koori Radio in 2003. And then later on from that, I kicked on to do when NITV got its license in 2007. I got asked to do some sports commentary then. And it was the cricket. My first ever thing I did cricket commentary on was the Imparja Cup in February, 2008. So to be able to get an opportunity then doing that was great. But I think I got that opportunity because Paula Mailing, who deadly young producer, she'd love that, deadly producer out there who's been doing television and a whole bunch of content production, still does it to this day. She rang me and said, I want you to test for this new show, Barefoot Rugby League show. So I was doing that testing and hosting that, because I'd hosted a lot of sports programs on radio before. I did the Sweet Science boxing show on radio, Black Gold, which is a Hall of Fame boxing sports show. She realised that, if NITV were going to keep doing knockouts, then I'd probably need more experience throughout the year. So we did that show for about 4 years. And in that, then she said, well, you're going to get an opportunity to call the footy for the knockout. And I was like, this is heavenly, finally going to get a chance to do the one thing I wanted to do. So it was probably all those years back in 2007, 2008. There's a few other controversies behind the scenes of why I didn't call in 2007, but I don't want to talk about them here. But I ended up waiting a whole year. I could have called in 2007, but I waited to call in 2008. And from then on, mate, it's just been the joy of every single year getting a chance to do that. But I think why I've been lucky enough to do it is because I've produced a lot of content in the background.
Yep.
When I'm not, doing the knockout in 2 years, I run my own production, media, creative agency, Campfire X, for all you people who want to hire us. Thanks, George. And being able to produce stories and write content and meet people, that's what helps you with your storytelling and your knowledge. And travelling around the state and travelling around the country, you're meeting people in communities, and that's what people, I think they like the respect that I show, is that when I go to places and talk to people, I'm genuinely interested in them. A lot of people who work in media or talk, they're only interested in how they sound and what they, how they come across. All I care about is the people I'm talking about feel appreciated and respected. And hopefully that comes out, because, what's the point of going somewhere like, and you mentioned knockout. The way I enjoy the knockout week is when I arrive there on Wednesday for the draw, or Thursday, wherever it is, man, I'll go and have a beer at the pub, and mingle with as many local blackfellas as I can wherever that event is held, because that's where you find out all the real stories. You're not finding them out, people producing you, and there's no producer behind the scenes for us telling us what's going to happen at a knockout. We've got to do the homework ourselves. Yeah. So I'm doing it myself.
What about the NRL? It's still a challenge for us, right, to get someone through the ranks to call NRL games on Channel 9?
It all comes down to who you know. Like I'm not having those conversations. I'm not trying to mingle with the right people. I think I'm a bit old for it now. I'm 52 soon, so it's like as much as I'd still love to do it, I would have thought by now, even though I've called one on radio, I would have thought Nine or Fox would have at least hired me to call the All-Stars. Right? For me, it's a blight on them that they rave about how they're giving all these opportunities to blackfellas to play together in an All-Stars game, but they won't give an opportunity for me to call it or for other people to be around that, I'm loving all the support Jess Skinner and Ronald Griffiths are getting now coaching, and that you've had coaching and all these different roles people have had, but I'm sitting here in the background going, I'd love to call it. I'd love to tie this all together and have a blackfella call this game. And a Māori commentator as well. They're probably sitting back thinking, where's our involvement in this?
Well, their last names and the pronunciations of names, a lot of them mob always complaining about that. And that's something that you definitely want said properly in those big games. The tribe names and all that sort of stuff, which you bring that knowledge, and it definitely is something that should happen at All Stars. And
I'd love
push this to have someone like you call a game. It'd be a capping moment for someone like you, and well deserved.
Yeah, I mean,
all the work you've done in the past.
Thanks, bro. What I love watching, Yvonne Sampson, and I especially love watching Jakey Duke just kill it. Yeah. Right, he's going so well. Watching him, he's a deadly interviewer. Seeing them excel and succeed, it gives me joy. I'd love to be able to call a game and say that yes, there is a blackfella, even if it's not me. We've got. You mentioned who, off air before we come on. You said, who's coming through the ranks? We've had guys calling with me for a while, like Juro San, Dan Conifer. I used to love calling him young Dan Conifer because he called the first KO fan on TV in 2007 at 16. Right? Yeah, that's a kid with a mass heart. Now he's like the main advisor to the Premier of New South Wales. That's what the fella does for a full-time job. And we've got, young Eli Corliss. I can call him young because he is young. He's still studying at university. He's a Murray fellow he's passionate. He's come down, given him an opportunity, and now he's really enjoying himself. If people can't see a role model to model off and say, right, I want to call the NRL like he did and she did, then people aren't aspiring to do it. The fact that we still haven't had, I've called it for radio, but I haven't called it for TV. I'd love to do it. When the knockouts played on Fox Sports, that gives me a thrill. It's like, at least I got my commentary on Fox Sports. People might hear him. I think, that guy's not too bad. Could he be an opportunity? But no one, unless you've got an agent and they're pushing for you, it's not going to happen. So who knows what the future lies? But I'd love to see more coming through. I put a blanket call out a couple of years ago when NITV was streaming on the Friday and Saturday, just running the one camera on Field 1. And I put it out on my personal Facebook page. Who thinks they can do what I do, come and put your hand up. Well, they all come out of the woodwork. I want to do this. Yeah, brother, uncle, I'll do it. And all his names down. I had a spreadsheet, I had phone, I had, details. When I chased them up, they're all like, oh, no, too shame, eh? Or, nah, I was only joking. Or, oh, nah, can't make it there now. Or, can you pay me to come? And I'm like, look, if you want to do it, here's your chance. And in the end, 2 people turned up. One was young Eli, as I mentioned, who's now calling for NITV and getting paid. And the other one was a former trainer, Linda Kitchen. And she was deadly. She used to be the sports physio for Jordan Mailata back when he was playing junior grades in the Bulldogs. She came and had a go. She's like, I always wanted to give this a try. Thanks so much for letting me have a crack. Did she love it? No. But she had a good crack at it. So, look, there are opportunities, but I do know that when you go to some of the bush knockouts and the boys are having a crack up at Lismore, or people are having a go, it's just, I think, you really need to push and see it through. Younger ones have got to get involved in it, but there's no role model for them to follow.
You want to put an official call out right now then? Let's do it.
I don't know what, first of all, the hosts are going to do with the coverage, and I don't know what NITV is going to do with the coverage.
We'll do whatever the fuck you want to do.
I get the phone call 3 weeks out saying, hey, do you want to do the knockout? And I sit there thinking, when are they going to call me? Are they going to call me? Like, even I'm nervous every year thinking they're not going to call me.
Well, it's a given. You're locked in. There's no one that can ever no one can ever take your spot in what you do. Simple as that. Like, there's people that may try, but you're the best at what you do. You're connected to the community. You know the people. And we know you're a black fella all year round and looking forward to it. So that's why you're always going to be the man for the job. But I also think you're the best fella to teach the next batch of people coming through. So anybody who does want to get into footy calling or footy commentating, whatever it is, take your opportunity. He's put a call out before. He's putting a call out again. If you want to get involved in the knockout call, this is a man that'll teach you how to do it. And we need more talent coming through. And on that, I'd also want to just talk to you a little bit about what do you think now people should be doing to get to that point to be able to call games? Because, I mean, you talked about you did your boxing shows, you did your other sporting shows through Koori Radio, through NITV, you did a lot of stuff. Now, I mean, people are doing a lot of podcasting. People are doing a lot of their own YouTube stuff, their own social media stuff where they'd be able to grow. What do you think would be a path for someone now? If they're interested in it, they might not have a background in media, but if they're interested in becoming a caller, what should they be looking at and what should they be trying to do?
Yeah, the good question, and I think the answer is yes, we're in a social media world. So, if you do want to make content, create the content. Honestly, what makes you good is the amount of mistakes you've made. Players only get better because they've dropped a lot of ball and they've, missed tackles the wrong way, or, it all comes down to trial and error and mistakes. You only get better when you stuff up. And I'm no different. I've made that many mistakes over the years. What I think I liked about there's two phases. I'm struggling answering the questions today because I'm usually the one asking the questions, right? That's the challenge. It's okay when you're asking because your preparation is there. You're like, I've written down all these questions. I've played the interview back in my head. I know how I want people to respond. I'm not steering them there. I'm not influencing them. I'm just ready for what might come next. And that's what I say to people. Put yourself in both shoes, right? People run influencers or podcasters these days running around trying to make themselves look deadly or make money off someone's product. Do you actually really care about what people think about the product or you or the people out there? Not really. They're only worried about themselves. So if you can go into if you're trying to talk a lot and practice talking nonstop, it's hard. That's why I loved radio, because I was able to talk a lot and work out how I was going to be better at things. You really need to know what it's like to ask a question and give an answer at the same time. My biggest advice to people is play both roles, and that's the real trick to being. And you've got to have knowledge, right? You've got to be confident that what you're saying is right. There are many times where I just won't even go down a path of a conversation if I know I've got no idea. Like, it's like, why would I put myself in that position to start going down the yarn? If I'm asking somebody, I've got no idea about this. Can you fill me in? That's fine, but don't. I see a lot of people making the mistake of pretending they know a lot and then just making mistakes, and then that's when they make a fool of themselves. So I think get a good base of knowledge, have a strong empathy of who you're talking to and what you're about to get out of it, and why it's important you're asking the questions. Don't just ask it for your own benefit. Ask it for everybody else's benefit. And then I think you build a lot of trust in people. People build that trust in you. They're like, oh, okay, well, I don't mind listening to him because I know it's not all bullshit, or he actually cares about what the person's going to say. When you really stop caring about what people are saying is when you just know that they're just opening their mouth and spewing rubbish. So my tip to people is, if you're going to do it, be a good person about it and have a care for the people you're talking about and do as much homework as possible.
That's interesting.
Great tips. Yeah. Great tips. And I know that there's a lot of live streams you see at all these smaller carnivals and smaller events.
Keep going, please.
Yeah, and that's where they can put these things that you've talked about. You've given so many tips here today about prepping and knowing players' names and all that stuff, because that's where they can get that experience is in the live streams, and you can hopefully a lot of the mob that are out there listening.
I think the one thing I don't really know about is my style. I haven't thought about a style, and I'm sure deep in me I've probably emulated half a dozen other callers in moments. I don't really know what that style is. It's one thing in a knockout when you, like in the early days, we were calling, like back in the day, they were doing 3 days of knockouts. It was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I was calling games back to back, and I was, without breaks. And by come Monday afternoon when you're doing the grand final, you're completely exhausted. Like now I can get through a Monday and not feel exhausted. I can have that energy to call at a passion for every game. Whereas, I know historically when if I'm crook, that's another thing. Keeping yourself healthy.
No after parties.
No drinking at night. Like, I'm Monday night after knockout.
There goes half our commentators.
Who wants to charge on Monday night?
Half the young commentators are just put a line for their names there right now.
It's true. It's true. If your brain's not going like that when you're trying to memorise names and put it to the thing and call it speed and think you know what's about to happen, anticipate the game,
they're long days too. Eh? Like we're the first there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We're the first ones at the Oval, and we're the last ones to leave. When Brad last year, we were leaving when it was getting dark at the fields, and
And how cold was it up there?
there was that freezing up in that box. But he's that dedicated to it, and that's what probably a lot of the mob don't understand is the hours they could put in over that week. It's long days, 4 days in a row. You leave exhausted.
I think what helps is because I know, and we've been around the game enough, and we had a crack. And 9 years ago, we did that Road to the KO podcast.
Yeah.
That's 9 years ago now, right? So when you've thought about the game and the knockout in its entirety, how hard it is to run one, what's the go with the judiciary? What's the go with like every aspect and element of it? Like my brother and I, we built the KO app to support the knockout. When you know what's happening in every facet of the game, it makes it easier to talk about. Do I know everything? No, of course not, right? But when it comes down to it and you're saying something, I know when we're wrapping up the coverage after 2 days of calling non-stop footy, and then I've got to try and remember who to thank and what to do. And, you either, and I've been doing, as I said, 17 years, except for COVID, I've been doing it. But at the same time, it's right, be respectful here. Don't stuff this. Who do you need to make sure you've looked after?
Yeah.
So that's, if you don't have that in your heart and soul, then you're not going to do the right thing.
I know you've been given.
I don't know whether this is intentional, but the bloke who gave me the most excitement is actually sitting in the room in the far side. So I don't know, was that intentional? He inspiring me. But we're talking about Shane Nolan Carr. I'm not sure if you don't want the police to know you're here, bro. Sorry about that. But that was easily by far the most excitement and call that I've nailed, I think, in the knockout. When Foxy strips the ball, right, all Newcastle All Blacks have to do is just hold on to the ball and get tackled. And Fox strips the ball one-on-one on the halfway line. And then Scotty Briggs holds him down and gives away a penalty. I'm like, just get up off him. All you need to do is just to make one more tackle, get off him. And then I'm just saying, like, don't give away a penalty here, and then gives away the penalty. And then we're looking at, who's going to step up? Are they going to take the two? Of course. And Owen was sitting next to me. He's getting all jittery and excited about it. And Shane Nolan Carr steps up, puts it on the thing, and nails this 49-metre kick. And I think that's when I got into that. And, it's going over. He's got it. It's there. And can you believe it? All that sort of, you get all excited.
That was a big
you
moment.
lose yourself completely. You forget where you are, what you're doing, and you just spew out the first thing that comes into your heart. And that was the best. And then when, Jono scores the try in the corner in extra time to win it, and I was like, wow. And you just see, once I remember you going over and consoling the boys there on the ground after you won it. And you just see that's the beauty of a knockout at the end when they're that close. Caught a lot of close games. Like Albert Kelly kicking field goals in like consecutive knockout wins in grand finals for Yowies. And then, George Rose's post-match speech in 2009 where he had more expletives than poor old Sam Bacco back in the day. That knockout was... They're the two games where I sit back and go, how blessed am I to sit here and do this job? 44 all in extra time, going into extra time.
That's crazy.
Chrissy Sando misses the kick to win it in normal time. The amount of 40-20s in that game, and Sean Daylight scores the try at the end. And that day in Armidale, that weekend, 4 seasons of weather in 4. Like
don't go running down Armidale here.
No, I'm not.
I'm just joking.
Apart from the police presence, I thought it was the greatest knockout of all time. You couldn't fart that weekend without the gunsies around. But they're the moments where they come right down to it. You got 6 games of footy. You busted your ass. All these teams are there. And how does it come down to extra time in a grand final after 4 straight days? It's just not possible. How you could separate 300 minutes of football and then have to go into extra time to win it.
Yeah.
And how many knockouts have been won on more than 300 minutes? In the last 15 years, there's probably been about 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. Is oh my God, we're going to go into extra time here. I can't handle it. How are they doing it? It's amazing.
Some very special
great
moments
memories
there.
there, yeah.
The story of this has to be told, and one of the things why I wanted to get involved with this podcast was we need these stories out there. We need these memories, and particularly before a lot of our old fellas go away. What about some of your players that you've admired watching over the years?
I hang on this podcast too, by the way. I watch it and I love it. over the years, wow. I mentioned two big front rowers before that I just absolutely adored in Big Reggie Saunders and Tohi Leha, two motors which boys that big shouldn't have. And, they've both left us now. He's been mentioned on this show, and I mentioned to you when we were cruising around Vegas in a car last year. I didn't get the call this year, by the way, do you know? But that's okay.
He's busy.
Yeah, he's busy. Yeah, his phone wasn't working when he was cruising the strip.
Yeah, I got sick. You didn't want to go this year.
Your old mate Dennis Moran is my all-time favourite knockout player. I mentioned before about how Lapa could use a decision maker like him at the end of a game. Like if you put him if you switch him out of your side into Lapa side in 08, we win hands down.
I would have smashed him.
You might have, but he would have lifted you back. Don't worry about that.
If he would have went and played for Lapa, we would have
Well, he's played for everybody else. How many other teams he played for?
He knows it too, Dad. He knows it.
He's played for a few other sides, so you had a chance to lift him. Both of you have.
Yeah, we played against each other when we were kids, and he drop kicked it out to me once, and I flew down the side. I've never seen someone so determined coming across to wipe me out. Like I could just see the look in his eyes, but I was too quick, and he missed me, and he went flying over the sideline. But if he would have got me, he was gonna give me everything he had. But yeah, no, he done some special moments over the year, and you've always called that with him. What about the Lapa players that you admire in the current side?
I want to shout out to my little brother, but
yeah,
Clenny Cooke I watched him play and taken heads off fellas for a long time. He didn't know how to tackle below the nipples. My little brother. I was real low tackler. He was above the nipples. Yeah, absolutely. It was fun watching him play. When I get excited about, I'm devastated that I mentioned his name already before. Jade Anderson hasn't played first grade football.
Good footballer.
It's a travesty. Like when he was at Manly,
I wish he stayed there.
When he was at Manly, they were busted,
Yeah.
and they had him killing it in reserve grade,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't give him a start. So I would. Hopefully, it's not too late for him, but I'm pretty sure it is now, especially if he's come back and playing A grade footy with Lapa. He was a fellow I completely love watching play. We've over the year, in more recent years, the lads that are finally retiring, with Chappie Silver and our pal Daly, they would bleed out of every orifice for Lapa to win. They just tried that hard over the years. We got some exciting young players coming through, but it's been the veterans that have held Lapa together, I think, for a long time. And we got some exciting young ones coming through. Like you mentioned with Bowen, how Blacktown have been winning all these junior grades. So has Lapa.
Lapa under 17s every year.
Yeah.
If they're not winning it, they're well in there, and they've got talent.
Yeah.
That's what I ask every year. Where's these under 17? I've been watching them for the last 10 years come through and absolutely kill them. Where'd they end up?
So you got this thing, right? And this is going to be about culture and identity and where you're from. Where you got Lapa, these young lads who've come to Sydney, their families come to Sydney, they all come and play with Lapa. They're not all from Lapa, but they play all with Lapa, and their mates, they grew up there. There may be 2 generations growing up in Lapa, but they've got this connection to their countryside, right? Their mum or their dad or whatever. So they're going back and playing A-grade football, open knockouts for where they're from. So it is hard on Lapa that you build a lot of these young talents up, and then next thing you know, you're seeing them play against you in a knockout. So it is hard. It's challenging on the community. And that's where it gets through. Plus also, there's not an untold number of sides in the 17s. So when one lad goes, you got a good side, I'm going to go and play with Lapa.
Yeah, well, a lot of our boys have played in that Lapa 17s. Tyson, Zach, all them boys all come through.
Young Lockie Moses is the best recruitment officer going in rugby league. He got all the boys from the New South Wales 16s to go and play for him in the 17s last year to knock out. He's a great young footballer too, great young leader, and he's one that they can build around there. Richie Williams, Jamie Ingram, some of these players. That South Coast connection has always been a strong connection for
Wiley Manton.
Yeah, Freema great intercept Wiley.
And the joy he had last year when we played with Burke and Burke beat Lapa, you should have seen the joy in his face. All his mates on the other side, and he beat them. But I'd love watching him. Richie Williams has been an absolute superstar. The fact, hurting his Achilles and that was just horrendous. Like, he could have played forever and a day.
Yeah,
he's an absolute superstar player. And that South Coast connection hasn't stopped. Like we had it in 1992 when I played in that under-19 side, and we've still got it today. A player, I don't know what his temperament is. I don't know him too well, but a guy like Ryan James, who plays in the centres for the South Coast Black Cockatoos when they won it, and that was that 2019 side, right? A lot of the guys in the South Coast playing with Lapa. That Lapa side played in respect to James Wello passed away. Returned the favour, and they went down there, missing out on extra time and a field goal to then go down and win it the next year with South Coast. That cut Lapa.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all these years of trying to... Lapa hasn't won a knockout since 2003. No, 2002.
Wow.
So it's 1 and 2. So all the hate Lapa gets being the city side and all that, we haven't won one for 23 years. How about you all calm down out there? You know? Stop running Lapa down.
It's known to be a hard team to play every year. That's the thing. Is no one wants to draw Lapa. No one wants to have to play Lapa because they're a good team.
And proud of it too.
Yeah.
And no, look, winning knockouts is great, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
You got to keep saying to people, out of 64 men's teams that nominate, only one can win it. Yeah. So what, the 63 are failures? No, they're not.
No.
It's about how you spend that, build up to that knockout. Like the way communities come together in the lead up to a knockout, the extra days of training.
Yeah.
You know, you're catching up the yarn and how you been going, bud? Like mental health improves because people are together, they're looking after one another. You know, you got a job, what are you doing? Conversations happening which would not normally happen. So then we're starting to look after one another more and more.
That's true.
Right? And I think that's what people don't see with knockout. They go, oh, what modern day corroboree, what a joke. You know, it's not culture. It's coming together. It's bringing our communities together. It might be more of the way we do things in this day and age, but it just makes people healthier, stronger, and if you don't have to win a knockout to have a successful campaign.
100%. 100%. It is. It's the months leading up to it, and it's that weekend itself. Yeah. I still we lost in Nowra the other year. That was one of my favourite knockouts because we'd missed the year with COVID, 2 years with COVID.
Yeah.
And we finally got back there. We got lifted in the final, but I still felt like I left there as a winner because it was the best. It was the best just to be back around it again.
100%. Now, Tamworth. Now, George has said lock you in for knockouts. So you can go to ITV and demand a pay increase now because you got the main man locked you into the commentary.
I'll give him a fair rap this whole one.
I'm not divulging my salary, but let's just say I'm doing it for the love, not the money.
Well, now you can get a bit more love, hopefully.
No, look, I don't want any more bump. I'm just happy to be
Tamworth. What are you looking forward to in Tamworth, and what are your expectations?
Can I tell you, I've never been to Tamworth. I've been everywhere in New South Wales. For some reason, I've never been to Tamworth.
Bring your guitar.
Brother, I'm not a country music fan, eh? I get it. I get Neon Moon and Tennessee Whiskey. I get all that. They're early yarns.
That hurts me.
My old man was a big Johnny Cash fan, so I sort of get all that. But I'm willing to have a crack for that week.
Randy Travis, Alan Jackson, they're like family when you go up here to Tamworth. And
no wonder you dodged him in Vegas this second time. You didn't want to borrow him.
Uncle Roger Knox.
Mr. Grand Old Opry himself right here.
Yeah, mate, the country music. No.
Black country's a different story. Our black country's a different story. Uncle Roger and I have known him for a very, very long time. Yeah. He's a great man. I can do that, right? We just lost Uncle Bunno too recently. You know, the great legendary crooner out Lapa. Best of Koori classics. Remember, I was at Koori Radio for a long, long time. Yeah. I used to pump those Koori country classics all the time. So I know them.
But it's not the country.
But I don't know much of the American ones.
I thought you would have got my playlist in the last year at Bathurst. Man, you're driving around Bathurst. I thought you would have got my playlist, but you must have been zoning out.
He was thinking about players' names.
I was looking up at the Sphere. I was looking up at the...
He was concentrating on players' names. Yeah, Georgie said he's that prepped. He forgot
sadly, I think it was Vegas. It was a big week. So concentrating and just get... Like you were in an outside car with the roof down because I could actually get some fresh air and breathe because let's just say the previous 2 nights was big in Vegas for me before that yarn.
You can hear Vegas still in my voice. So I'm still struggling.
I know apparently everyone come back crook.
Yes. The people thought I was on benders over there because my voice was so bad, but I didn't go out at all. I was just struggling with the sickness, the flu.
A lot of people said they saw you.
I was going to say, who'd believe in that yarn?
A lot of people over there that look like me.
Who'd believe in that yarn? I'll follow you on social media.
I might have went out a few times.
T-Pain, eh?
You had an extended
anyway, but we're talking about you on this podcast.
You stayed a bit longer too this year, didn't you?
Yeah, I know. There's an attraction there. There's something that this magnetic call there. I missed Georgie there though. First time I've been there without him, the big fella. So.
But, you must have the front row seat of every plane back and forth to America.
This fella, yeah.
They will know.
We'll be back next year. We'll be back next year.
We'll definitely be back.
Now, what are you looking forward to for Tamworth? What's your predictions?
Look, I honestly believe the same nucleus of sides are going to be there again. I'm not seeing enough from the teams coming up through. And I don't think Sydney All Blacks have got it in them. Nah, these fellas. I think the same nucleus of sides are coming through. I do like the growth of Blacktown.
Yeah.
If Burke can get more of a nucleus side together, like Burke can put fear into sides.
Yeah.
Like they tend to do it based off the back of fear in opposition. But I think they need a little bit more add to the class of the Pello brothers, and that they could go all the way. Nanima's picking up again. You know, are they going to get the same solid side again? And you know,
Monday experience under the belt.
that's 2 now in 3 years for them. So, I think it's going to be great. I obviously would love to see Lapa get there. I'd love to call him win one, you know, before I give it away. Which I don't. Hopefully, he's not.
You've still got a few years in you. You've
Yeah,
still got
I
20
hope
years in
so.
you. Might take 20.
I'll hopefully trim down a little bit before then. But I keep hearing you guys talk about Tweed. What I saw about them, they need to get fit.
Yeah.
Their fitness is a big issue for Tweed. Yeah, they got the skills and they got some experience, but that's not a side that can win on a Monday unless they get fit.
I think there's a number of sides like that though too. The sides that'll beat you round 1, round 2,
Yeah.
but they don't have the fitness to get through to.
No, I see that a lot, and when you bring in sides back again together and they're trying to build that, if you got having the player nucleus is fine, but if you don't have the background of that community support and the training team and the people doing the massaging and strapping and food and all that, you're not going to get there. You can't just have good old experienced players. You've got to have professionalism around your team to win a knockout these days.
And take care of the body.
Because as I said, I agree. Like Boomy side, like you just beat them, so that's a team that we saw a lot of talent in that side, and if they can keep it together, have that one side, we won't even have the yarn about Kempsey getting one side because we know it won't happen. But and we'd love to see it. I'm one of them too. I annoy people every year saying it, but that's a sign the Boomy side could go a bit further too. Good to see him get them in the Monday. I think, and you knocked off both Boomies and War, right? So that's what I mean by tough draws. And that side too, them not having a first round game, War, really hurt them. That team pulling out late. Imagine being a rake up side and you're drawing War or whack first game. It must be hard on these community sides going, I'm not hurting myself for this. But that's what we used to do back in the day. Like I said, playing 2 straight years against South Tauri ones and a Lapa 2 side, we got flogged, but you're proud to play. I'd be interested to see what sort of side they keep putting together. And are they playing together as a team, or are they a team that's come together for the KO? That's. I can't give you a winner. I mean, if I'm going to tip a winner right here now, I'm going to say Wack's going to go 3 in a row. Right.
He wrapped it up pretty well there, didn't he? I think you've hit the nail with nearly every one of those teams about where their issues are, where their challenges are, and what they need to work on. And it's when you talk about fitness, and you got to be super fit. There's too many good teams in there now. It's too hard of a weekend. Like I watched it this year, last year closely, and like I played in some tough, hard knockouts, but you need extra level conditioning now to get through the battles that you have to get through as a player, and you need professional recovery and all that stuff. Where we didn't need that back in the day. You had community passion and skillful footballers that would get you through, tough footballers that would get through it. But you need way more than that, and these are teams that, especially Tamworth, it's going to be probably the most testing conditions that you'll play in. And I'll say it here right now that the fittest team will win in Tamworth. I don't care what players are in what team. It's going to come down to who are the fittest 25.
Yeah.
Because the conditions will be so tough up there. Blackfellas these mob don't know what they're up against going to Tamworth. It's going to be brutal.
Yeah, that's true. And I heard you say most likely will be that warm temperature. I'm not looking forward to that.
At least you won't have to worry about your pants splitting, and if the pants split,
I'll be splitting them intentionally,
Yeah.
I mean, look, as the professional goes with the football players and the event, the coverage, the area that it needs to keep disciplined and quality is in the officiating of the games. I've found on some of the outer grounds, the officiating declined a little bit last year, personally. I think we need to keep enforcing in our referees. Discipline is important. And we make sure that, we have professionalism all the way through. Far out, man. It just, how much better can it get? Like, it's already unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yet, we're still trying to pick at little things where we just, bugger it, let's just
Well, I
enjoy
mean,
it.
we talked about the teams that are, there's 30-odd teams there that are going to turn up. They're turning up for a good time anyway. They're not turning up to try and get through to the Monday. They're turning up to have some fun together, get the chance to play against a good team. Some of them will knock off a good team, and then they'll go and celebrate at the after party and have a great weekend. But there's a lot of people that come for different reasons. Yeah, well, you're too busy. As soon as you get the rest of these young fellas in to take care of your Sunday morning call or your Monday morning call, then you're sweet.
No, it takes me days to get over one night now, so that's not happening. I'll wait till the end.
Well, I reckon we've still got a lot more that we can talk to you about in the Knockout. So I don't think this will be the last time that you'll be here on the Knockout podcast, but we do thank you for coming on and sharing some of your knowledge about what from your side of the Knockout. I think that's really cool to know what you do and the amount of footy that you've seen over your time. We do thank you for coming on.
Brother, thank you very much. I've had the pleasure of calling you both winning KOs. You're both, testament to the communities you're from, the hard effort you put into your playing careers, and now you're doing it post-career. So I take my hat off to both of you and everything you're achieving at the moment. And for everyone, young ones out there, just be proud of who you are. Have a crack. Don't make mistakes. Don't worry about it. I think that's the beauty. And if you want to do what I do, just start. Turn on your own phone. And I remember calling games into a video cassette recorder, plugging a microphone in at the age of 10, 11 on my mate's VCR. And, hoping one day that I'd have a crack, and I was able to do that about 19 years after that. So I've been very, very lucky.
And for the young fellas that don't know what that means, for now, it just means pick up your phone and talk to your phone and do the same thing. It's an easy part to start. There's the example. That's what you could be. Thanks for joining us, Cookie. We really appreciate it. Keep tuning into the Koori Knockout podcast. Plenty more to come.